He came back for his grandmother's funeral, only to find himself quietly erased from his own family. No one argued, no one explained. Everything had already been decided before he arrived. So he walked away like he always had, until his dog refused to let the story end there. Because deep in the forest, near an abandoned watermill sawmill, something was still waiting for him. Not just memories, but a truth she tried to protect, and a town tried to bury. And when it begins to surface, it doesn't just change his life. It forces an entire town to face what they chose to ignore. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Veteran Dog Stories. The winter sun stretched pale and distant across Pine Hollow Ridge, filtering through tall northern pines like something fragile, light that existed, but offered no warmth. Rowan Hale stood at the edge of the gravel path, boots planted firmly against the frozen ground, his broad shoulders squared beneath a weathered olive field jacket that had seen more years than most men cared to count. At 43, he carried himself like someone who had learned how to survive long before he learned how to belong. He was tall, just over 6 feet, his frame lean but hardened by years of special operations work. His face was carved in sharp lines, a defined jaw, rough stubble darkened by the cold, and eyes, blue-gray, steady, and unreadable. The kind of eyes that didn't ask questions anymore because they had learned answers often came too late. His short dark hair, cut in a military style, showed streaks of early silver at the temples. Not age, not quite. More like time had passed through him differently. Beside him stood Ash. The German Shepherd K9 was 5, maybe 6 years old. Prime age, built for work, not comfort. His coat was a deep black, fading into warm tan along the legs and chest, short and dense, clean despite the long road behind them. His posture was still, balanced, alert without tension. His amber eyes moved slowly, deliberately, taking in the house ahead. Not curious, recognizing. Rowan exhaled slowly, the breath leaving his chest like something heavier than air. "Yeah," he muttered under his breath. "I see it too." The Hale house looked smaller than he remembered. It had once been the center of everything, a place full of voices, arguments, laughter that carried into the night. Now it stood quiet, the wooden structure worn down by years and silence, its windows reflecting the pale sky instead of the life that once filled them. He hadn't been back in years. Not since the day he left. Not since the day leaving became easier than staying. Rowan adjusted the strap of his Eberly stock half-track backpack over one shoulder and started forward. Gravel crunched beneath his boots, loud in a way that felt out of place, like he didn't belong to the sound anymore. Ash moved with him, not ahead, not behind, exactly at his side. They reached the door just as it opened, but no one greeted him. Not properly. The room inside was already full. Voices, low, controlled, shifted when Rowan stepped in, not stopping, just bending away from him, like wind avoiding an obstacle. The funeral had already happened. Of course it had. He was late. Or maybe they had made sure of it. The air inside smelled faintly of old wood and something floral. Cheap arrangements placed out of obligation rather than care. Rowan removed his gloves slowly, his scarred hands rough against the cold. The kind of scars that didn't belong to this town. The kind no one here wanted to ask about. People looked at him. They just didn't look at him. His eyes moved across familiar faces. Neighbors, distant relatives, people who once knew his name before it became something easier to forget. And then he saw her. Miriam Hale, early 50s, slight build. She had always been a quiet woman, but now she looked smaller in a different way, like she had spent years folding herself inward to fit into a space that no longer welcomed truth. Her brown hair, once full, was now streaked with gray, tied loosely at the back of her neck. Her face carried softness, but also strain, the kind that came from holding something in for too long. Her eyes met Rowan's, just for a second, then dropped, not out of anger, out of something closer to guilt. Rowan held that moment longer than necessary, then let it go. There were too many things he didn't need confirmed. At the front of the room, the casket was already closed. Margaret Hale. Gone. Without waiting. Without him. Rowan didn't move closer. He didn't need to see her to know she was no longer there. Ash stepped slightly forward, his body brushing against Rowan's leg, not seeking comfort, but offering presence. Solid. Certain. Alive. Rowan's jaw tightened slightly, just enough to shift the lines of his face. Then, didn't think you'd make it. The voice came smooth, measured, perfectly placed. Rowan turned. Victor Kane stood near the fireplace, tall, composed. His charcoal coat fitted him too well for a place like this, his posture controlled in a way that wasn't natural. It was practiced. His dark hair was streaked faintly with silver, his expression calm, but never empty. His eyes were sharp, calculating, not surprised, not welcoming, just assessing. Rowan didn't answer right away. He studied the man instead. Victor Kane didn't belong here, not in the way he was standing, not in the way people were listening to him. "I didn't come for you," Rowan said finally. Victor's lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. "Of course not," he replied. "You came for what's left." There it was. Not an insult, a boundary, clean, precise, final. Rowan felt it settle in the room, not loud, but heavy enough that everyone else adjusted their stance without realizing it. Miriam shifted where she stood. A man near the window cleared his throat unnecessarily. No one interrupted. Victor stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to seem private while still being heard. "The estate's been handled," he said. "Everything's already decided." Rowan's gaze didn't move. "You always liked finishing things fast," he replied quietly. Victor's expression didn't change. "And you always liked leaving before things got complicated." Silence. Not sharp, but stretched. Ash moved, just a step, not toward Victor, not toward Rowan, toward the hallway. His ears lifted slightly, his body angled, not tense, not aggressive, just focused. Rowan noticed immediately. He always noticed. "Not now," Rowan muttered under his breath. But Ash didn't move back. For a brief second, barely more than a flicker, Ash froze. Completely. His gaze fixed not on the people, but past them, toward a narrow hallway that led deeper into the house. His ears tilted forward, not reacting to sound, but to something else. Recognition. Rowan followed his line of sight. There was nothing there. Just a hallway. Empty. Still. But Ash didn't look away. And in that moment, unexpected, unwelcome, Rowan felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Not fear, not memory, something unfinished. "Rowan," Miriam's voice broke the moment, soft, unsteady. He turned slightly toward her. She didn't step closer, didn't dare. "She would have wanted you to stay," she said. Her hands clasped tightly in front of her, as if holding herself together. Rowan's expression didn't soften. "She wanted a lot of things," he replied. "Didn't mean she got them." Miriam flinched. Not from the words, from the truth in them. Victor said nothing. He didn't need to. He had already won this room. Rowan knew it. He could feel it in the way people stood, in the way no one spoke, in the way silence had already chosen a side. He looked around one last time. Not at Victor, not at Miriam, at the house. For a moment, just one. He saw it as it had been. Warm, loud, alive. Then it was gone. Rowan turned. Ash followed instantly. At the threshold, Rowan paused. Not because he wanted to stay, because something in him hadn't caught up yet. Behind him, no one called his name. No one stopped him. The door didn't slam. It closed gently, like a place that had already let him go. Outside, the cold hit harder. Real, clean, honest. Rowan pulled his gloves back on slowly, the leather creasing under his fingers. Ash stood beside him, waiting, watching. The sky above Pine Hollow Ridge was bright. Too bright for something that had just ended. "All right," Rowan said quietly, his voice steadier now. "We're done here." He stepped forward, not toward town, not back to the road, just away. Gravel crunched beneath his boots again, the same sound. But now it belonged to something else. Ash followed, for a few steps. Then he stopped. Rowan took 2 more steps before noticing. He turned. Ash wasn't looking at the house. He wasn't looking at Rowan. He was looking into the trees, deep into the northern forest. Still, unmoving, certain. Rowan frowned slightly. "You serious?" Ash didn't respond, didn't move, didn't blink. And for the first time that day, Rowan didn't feel like he was leaving. He felt like something had just begun. Rowan Hale drove in silence. The road out of Pine Hollow Ridge stretched ahead in a pale ribbon of asphalt, cutting through endless rows of northern pines dusted with old snow. The sky above was clear, too clear, like something had been wiped clean without asking permission. His hands rested steady on the wheel, not tight, never tight. Control didn't come from force. It came from knowing when not to move. Beside him, Ash sat upright in the passenger seat, his body angled slightly toward the window. The German shepherd's ears shifted occasionally, picking up sounds Rowan couldn't hear, reading patterns Rowan couldn't see. For several minutes, neither of them moved. Neither spoke. That was how it had always been. Rowan glanced at him once. "You planning to explain that?" he muttered quietly. Ash didn't react, didn't turn, didn't need to. Rowan exhaled slowly and looked back at the road. He knew better than to expect answers. The forest thickened as the town faded behind them. First the houses disappeared, then the road signs, then the last trace of anything man-made. Just trees now, tall, narrow, rising like silent witnesses on both sides of the road. Rowan had driven this way before, years ago. But memory had a way of softening things. This place wasn't soft. It was precise, unforgiving. Ash moved. Not suddenly, but deliberately. His front paws pressed lightly against the dashboard, his body leaning forward, ears locking in one direction. Right? Rowan noticed. Of course he did. "You serious?" he said under his breath. Ash let out a low sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a bark, a decision. Rowan's jaw shifted slightly. He kept driving for another mile, then 2, ignoring it. Because ignoring things had always been easier than following them. Then it hit him. Not a sound. Not a sight. A memory. His father's voice, low, steady, like it had always been when explaining something that mattered. You'll hear it before you see it. The water. It never stops. Even in winter. Rowan blinked once. The road came back into focus. His hands didn't move, but something inside him did. He slowed. The fork appeared just ahead, barely marked, half hidden by snow and time. One path led forward. The other, narrow, uneven, curved into the woods. Rowan stared at it, then at Ash. The dog didn't look back. He was already facing the turn, waiting. Rowan almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Figured you'd do that." He turned the wheel. The road into the forest wasn't really a road anymore. It was memory pretending to be one. Snow gathered thicker along the edges, creeping toward the center where no one had bothered to clear it. The trees leaned inward, branches heavy, filtering sunlight into thin golden streaks that painted the ground in broken patterns. The air changed, sharper, cleaner, and beneath it, something else. Wood. Old wood. Water. Rowan rolled down the window slightly. Cold air rushed in, cutting through the truck like a blade. He didn't close it. He needed to hear. Ash didn't wait this time. Before the truck had fully stopped, he jumped down into the snow, landing with a soft crunch, his body lowered immediately, nose close to the ground. Tracking. Rowan watched him for a second, then stepped out. The cold hit harder here, not just temperature. Something deeper, quieter. He followed, not because he trusted the direction, but because there was nothing else left to trust. Ash moved through the trees with purpose, not rushing, not wandering. Every step placed, every pause intentional. Rowan noticed the details now. The broken branches, old tire tracks, half erased, faint marks in the bark where something heavy had brushed past. This place wasn't abandoned, not completely. They reached it without warning. One moment, trees. The next, open space. The remains of the watermill stood at the edge of a narrow stream, the structure leaning slightly, as if it had chosen to endure rather than collapse. The wooden wheel was broken in places, its paddles warped and gray from years of exposure. Moss clung to the beams. The platform sagged unevenly, and the water below moved steadily. Quiet, persistent, alive. Rowan stopped. Something in his chest tightened. Not recognition, not exactly, but close enough to hurt. "You took your time." The voice came from behind him. Rowan turned. Elias Wren stood a few yards away. He was tall once. You could still see it in the way his shoulders carried themselves, even now slightly bent with age. His frame was lean, weathered by decades of work rather than time alone. His gray hair fell unevenly, pushed back without care. His face was lined deeply, not soft lines, but ones carved by endurance. His hands, visible beneath worn gloves, were thick and calloused, marked by a lifetime of building, repairing, holding things together. His eyes were pale, not weak, just distant, like they had spent too long watching things people refused to see. Rowan studied him. "You've been expecting me?" he asked. Elias shrugged lightly. "Not you," he said. A pause. "Not exactly." His gaze shifted to Ash. "That one, though. I figured he'd find it sooner or later." Rowan frowned slightly. Ash ignored both of them. He moved past Elias, circling the edge of the platform, nose low, tracking something older than scent. Rowan stepped forward slowly. "This place," he said, his voice quieter now. "My father, he talked about it," Elias finished. Rowan stopped. Elias nodded once. Didn't talk about much, he added. But when he did, it was things worth remembering. Rowan let that sit. Didn't argue, didn't ask. They stood there for a moment, the sound of the stream filling the silence. Then Elias turned. "You can stay," he said simply. Rowan looked at him. "I'm not—" "Didn't say you were," Elias replied. He started walking toward a small cabin tucked just behind the mill. "Road's worse after dark," he added over his shoulder. "Ice shifts, trees fall, things break." A pause. "Men too?" Rowan hesitated, then followed. Because leaving for the first time didn't feel like the easier choice. Ash stopped abruptly, mid-step. His body froze, not tense, not aggressive, just completely still. His head lowered slightly, not toward the ground, toward a section of the wooden platform near the water's edge. A single plank, worn, darker than the rest. Rowan frowned. "What is it?" Ash didn't move, didn't bark. He simply stood there, eyes locked on that spot, as if something beneath it hadn't finished speaking yet. For a brief second, Rowan felt it again. That same unfamiliar pull. Not memory, not instinct, something deeper. Like the ground itself was holding something it wasn't ready to let go of. Elias noticed too. His expression didn't change, but his voice did, lower. "He found it faster than I thought," the old man murmured. Rowan turned sharply. "Found what?" Elias didn't answer immediately. He stepped closer instead, boots dragging lightly against the wood. "Guess you're not leaving tonight," he said. The light began to fade slowly behind the trees. The forest didn't darken all at once. It settled, layer by layer, like something closing in without urgency. Rowan stood still, his eyes moving between Ash and that single piece of wood. He didn't step closer. Not yet. Because for the first time since arriving, he wasn't sure if he wanted to know. Behind him, Elias spoke again. "Your father stood right there once," he said. Rowan didn't turn. Same look on his face, a pause. "Right before everything went wrong, the water kept moving, unchanged, unbothered, as if it had seen all of this before. And beside him, Ash didn't move, didn't blink, didn't let it go. Morning arrived quietly, like it didn't want to disturb what had been waiting beneath the surface. A thin layer of frost clung to the wooden beams of the watermill, catching the early light and breaking it into faint silver reflections. The stream beside the structure moved steadily, its sound low and constant, as if it had been speaking all night without being heard. Rowan Hale stood near the edge of the platform, hands resting loosely at his sides. He hadn't slept much, not because of the cold, not because of the unfamiliar place, because something inside him had shifted and hadn't settled back. Ash was already awake. The German shepherd moved slowly along the wooden planks, his nose low, tracing patterns Rowan couldn't see. His movements were different this morning, not searching, confirming. There was no hesitation now, no uncertainty. Rowan watched him for a moment. "You're sure?" he muttered. Ash didn't look back, didn't need to. Elias Wren stepped out of the small cabin behind them, pulling on his worn canvas coat. The old man moved with deliberate slowness, not because he was weak, but because he had learned there was no reason to rush what time had already decided. "You gonna keep pretending you don't see it?" Elias said, his voice rough from disuse. "Or you gonna do something about it?" Rowan didn't answer immediately. His eyes drifted toward the section of the platform Ash had marked the night before. The wood looked no different from the rest. weathered, a little darker, maybe. But nothing that would stand out to someone who wasn't looking for it. And that was the problem. Rowan had spent years training himself not to look for things that weren't obvious. It had kept him alive, but it had also taught him to ignore things that didn't make sense right away. He stepped forward, slowly. The wood creaked under his weight, low, steady, familiar. Ash stepped back just enough to give him space, but didn't leave, didn't break focus. Rowan crouched down, running his fingers along the edge of the plank. The surface was rough, worn smooth in some places by time, but there, a faint difference. The grain felt tighter, colder. He pressed down. Nothing, then slid his fingers along the edge again. Metal, not visible, but there. Rowan exhaled quietly. "All right," he said under his breath. "I see it." Elias didn't move closer, didn't offer help. He just watched, because some things had to be uncovered by the right hands. It took a few minutes. A pocket knife, careful pressure, a slight shift in angle. Then, a soft, dull sound. The plank lifted, not easily, but not as if it had been sealed forever either. More like it had been waiting. Rowan set it aside. Below, a narrow compartment revealed itself, lined with a thin layer of metal and coated in old waterproofing, crude but effective. Inside, bundles, wrapped tightly, preserved. Rowan stared for a moment before reaching in. His fingers hesitated. Not from fear, from recognition, because whatever this was, it had been left for someone, and that someone had been expected to come back. He pulled the first bundle free. Cloth, worn but intact. Inside, papers, not money, not valuables, records. Handwritten notes filled tight across the pages, neat and precise. Dates, locations, numbers that didn't mean anything on their own, but together. Pattern. Rowan's jaw shifted slightly. "Ledger," he murmured. Elias nodded once. "Your grandmother's handwriting," he said. Rowan didn't respond. He already knew. More bundles followed. Maps, detailed, marked with lines that didn't match the official boundaries Rowan remembered from years ago. Photographs, grainy, taken at a distance. Trucks, loaded with timber, moving at night. The timestamps written carefully on the back of each image. Rowan's breathing slowed. Not faster, heavier. Then, the letter, folded differently, not cataloged, not part of the system. Personal. Rowan recognized the paper before he opened it. He almost didn't. But Ash moved closer. Not touching. Just there, grounding. Rowan unfolded the letter. His eyes moved across the first line, then stopped. He read it again, slower, more carefully. The words didn't change. His father. Not an accident, not a mistake, not something that had simply gone wrong, a decision, a consequence. Rowan closed his eyes for a second, not long, just enough. Then folded the letter again, precisely, and set it aside. Elias finally stepped closer. "Your father didn't bend," the old man said quietly. Rowan didn't look at him. "He should have," he replied. There was no anger in his voice, just fact. Elias studied him for a moment, then shook his head slightly. "No," he said. He just didn't know who he was standing against. Rowan let out a slow breath. "Sounds familiar." They went through the rest in silence, each piece adding weight, not clarity, weight. Until Ash moved again, not toward Rowan, not toward Elias, Back to the compartment. He lowered his head and pushed gently against the side wall. Rowan frowned. What now? Ash repeated the motion, more precise this time. Rowan leaned in, reaching deeper into the compartment. His fingers brushed something small, solid. He pulled it out. A metal object. Cold, heavy, worn smooth at the edges from years of use. Rowan turned it in his hand. The Hale Mill seal. Original. Not a copy. Not something that could be replaced. Proof. Ash didn't react when Rowan lifted the seal. Didn't show excitement. Didn't shift his stance. Instead, he stepped back, slowly, then sat, facing Rowan. Not the compartment, not the objects. Rowan. His gaze steady, unblinking, and for the first time since opening the hidden space, Rowan realized something wasn't right. Ash wasn't showing him what was hidden. He was watching him, waiting, as if what mattered now wasn't what they had found, but what Rowan would do with it. Rowan's grip tightened slightly around the seal, then loosened. He looked down at it again, then at the papers, then at the stream. Everything felt aligned, too aligned. Why keep it here? Rowan asked finally. Elias leaned against one of the beams, his posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. Because it wasn't safe anywhere else, he said. Rowan frowned. This place isn't safe. Elias gave a faint, almost humorless smile. It is, he replied. If no one's looking. Rowan glanced around. The broken structure, the isolated clearing, the road that barely existed anymore. Yeah. No one was looking. He sat back on his heels, the weight of everything settling in. This proves something, Rowan said. Not enough, Elias replied immediately. Rowan looked up. What? The old man stepped closer now, slower than before. Proof doesn't matter, he said. Not by itself. Rowan's eyes narrowed slightly. Then what does? Elias met his gaze. Who's willing to see it? The words hung there, heavy, unavoidable. Rowan looked down at the documents again, then at the seal, then at Ash. The dog hadn't moved, still watching, still waiting. Rowan exhaled slowly. Not relief, not resolution. Something else. Something unfinished. If this is real, he said quietly, then everything they said about me was easier to believe, Elias finished. Rowan nodded once, because that was the truth. And truth didn't always win. Not here. Not in places like this. He carefully wrapped the documents again. Not the same way they had been before. His way. More secure, more deliberate. Then placed them back into the compartment, except for one thing. The seal. That stayed in his hand. Ash stood as Rowan rose. Close again. Steady. Rowan looked out over the stream. The water moved the same as before. Unchanged. Unconcerned. As if none of this mattered. But it did. It had always mattered. He just hadn't been there to see it. Behind him, Elias spoke one last time. Your grandmother didn't leave that for you to understand, he said. Rowan didn't turn. Then why? A pause. So you couldn't ignore it? Rowan let out a breath, long, measured, because ignoring things had always been his strength, and his weakness. Ash stepped forward, brushing lightly against his leg. Not pushing, not guiding, just present. Rowan looked down at the seal in his hand, then back toward the trees. The road out was still there, waiting, easy, simple, familiar. He didn't move, not yet, because for the first time in years, leaving didn't feel like control. It felt like surrender. The sound of wood against wood echoed softly through the clearing. Rowan Hale stood on the edge of the watermill platform, sleeves rolled just enough to reveal the hardened lines of his forearms, his movements steady but not rushed. The broken slats of the railing lay scattered beside him, and one by one, he began fitting them back into place. Not perfectly, not beautifully, but strong, functional. That was enough. He worked in silence, the same way he had learned to survive. Not thinking too far ahead, not looking too far back. Just the next piece. Then the next. Ash moved around him, not restless, but aware. The German shepherd paused occasionally, nose lifting to the air, tracking something distant, before returning his attention to Rowan. Always returning. That hadn't changed. Not once. The sound of footsteps came from behind. Light, controlled. Rowan didn't turn right away. He waited, measured, then straightened slowly, wiping his hands against his cargo pants before facing the direction of the noise. Lena Brooks stood at the edge of the clearing. She was taller than most women in town, her frame lean and built for movement rather than comfort. Her moss-green Ranger parka blended almost seamlessly with the forest behind her, and her dark brown hair was tied back in a loose knot that had come partially undone. Her face was sharp, defined, not harsh, but precise. The kind of face that didn't waste energy on unnecessary expression. Her eyes, though, that was where everything lived. Alert, analytical, not unkind. Just unwilling to trust easily. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, her voice calm but firm. Rowan studied her for a moment. "Neither is this place," he replied. A flicker crossed her expression, gone almost instantly. Not surprise, recognition. She stepped forward slightly, boots pressing into the damp ground. "People stopped coming out here for a reason," she said. Rowan shrugged lightly. "People stop doing a lot of things," he replied. "Usually when something goes wrong." That made him pause. Just for a second. Then, "What do you think went wrong?" he asked. Lena didn't answer right away. Her gaze shifted past him, taking in the structure, the repairs, the movement of the water. Then to Ash. The dog stood still, watching her. Not tense, not aggressive, just aware. Lena's eyes lingered there. "Dogs trained," she said. "Yeah." "K9? Rowan nodded once. Lena studied him again. This time longer. Then, "What are you planning to do with this place?" she asked. Not who are you, not why are you here. That. Rowan didn't answer, because he didn't have one. The answer came from the river. A sound cut through the quiet. Sharp, sudden, not natural. A shout. Rowan's head snapped toward the direction instantly. Ash was already moving. They reached the riverbank in seconds. The current had changed overnight. The ice melt upstream had pushed more water through the channel, turning the once steady stream into something faster, heavier, unpredictable. And in the middle of it, a boy. Late teens, maybe 20. Thin build, dark hair plastered to his face, his hands gripping a broken section of driftwood lodged between two rocks. His body was half submerged, legs caught in the current, his strength failing with every second. "Help!" the boy gasped, his voice cracking under the strain. Rowan didn't hesitate, didn't think. He moved. The cold hit instantly, sharp, violent. The water surged against his legs as he stepped in, each movement calculated, but faster than it should have been. Ash ran along the edge, tracking, not panicking, guiding. Rowan moved closer. 3 steps, then 4. The current shifted, subtly, Wrong. Ash barked. Once. Sharp. Not at the boy. At Rowan. A warning. But Rowan was already moving forward. Too far in. The ground beneath his boot gave way, just slightly, but enough. His footing slipped. The current grabbed him. Not fully, but just enough to pull his balance off center. For a fraction of a second, Rowan wasn't in control. Ash reacted instantly. He didn't jump into the water, didn't try to pull. Instead, he moved parallel to Rowan's position, placing himself at the exact angle where Rowan's body would naturally fall. Rowan's shoulder hit against Ash's flank. Not hard, but enough. Enough to shift his weight back, enough to stop the fall, enough to breathe. Rowan froze for half a second. That was all it took. Then he adjusted, lowered his stance, shifted his footing, corrected. Now, he was in control again. He reached the boy, grabbed the back of his jacket. "Don't fight it," Rowan said, his voice low but steady. "You move wrong. You're gone." The boy nodded weakly. Rowan pulled. Not straight. At an angle, using the current instead of against it. Ash stayed in position, moving along the edge, matching every shift Rowan made. Watching, calculating. It took longer than it should have. Felt longer than it was. But finally, the boy broke free. Rowan dragged him toward the bank, muscles tightening under the strain, boots slipping slightly against the riverbed. Then, hands grabbed them. Lena. She had moved without him noticing. Her grip was strong, controlled, pulling them both up onto solid ground. The three of them collapsed onto the bank. Breathing. Alive. The boy rolled onto his side, coughing violently, water spilling from his lungs. Up close, Rowan could see him clearly now. Young. Too young to be out here alone. His face was narrow, skin pale beneath the cold, with a faint scar cutting across his left eyebrow, a mark that hadn't fully healed right. "Name's Tyler," he managed between breaths. Rowan nodded once. "Rowan?" Tyler looked at him. Really looked this time. Recognition flickered. "Wait, you're..." Rowan cut him off. "Doesn't matter." Tyler didn't argue, didn't have the strength to. Lena stood, brushing dirt from her gloves. Her eyes moved between Rowan and Ash. Then back to Rowan. "You misread the current," she said. Not accusatory, not judgmental, just factual. Rowan nodded. Yeah, that was it. No excuses, no defense. Lena exhaled slowly, then glanced down at Ash. He didn't. Rowan followed her gaze. Ash stood a few feet away, water dripping from his legs where the spray had reached him. His body was still, but his eyes were on Rowan. Not checking, not asking, just present. Rowan pushed himself to his feet slowly. His muscles protested, not from weakness, but from the cold working its way deeper. He ignored it. He always did. Tyler sat up, still shaking. "You saved me," he said quietly. Rowan shook his head once. "No," he replied. Then, after a pause, "We did." Lena studied him again. Longer this time, different. Something had shifted, not trust, not yet. But the space between doubt and belief had narrowed. The river continued to move behind them. Unchanged, unforgiving. Rowan looked out at it, then down at his hands. For the first time in a long time, he felt it. Not fear, not regret. Something simpler, clearer. He could still get it wrong. He wasn't untouchable, wasn't above the moment. Ash stepped closer, brushed lightly against his leg, grounding him again. Rowan exhaled slowly. "Yeah," he muttered, almost to himself. I felt that. And for the first time since he had returned, he understood something he hadn't allowed himself to accept. Ash wasn't just following him. He was keeping him from falling. The change didn't come like a storm. It came quietly. That was what made it worse. Rowan Hale noticed it first in the deliveries. Or rather, the lack of them. The man who had agreed to bring in fresh timber for the repairs never showed. No message, no explanation, just absence. Then the hardware order didn't arrive. Then the fuel, each one small on its own. Together, deliberate. Rowan didn't react right away. He adjusted. He always did. Used what he had. Reinforced beams with older wood, reworked joints instead of replacing them. The mill didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to stand. But it wasn't just the materials. It was the people. They came less often. At first it was subtle. A man who used to stop by on his way through the forest didn't pause anymore. A woman who had waved the day before suddenly found something else to look at when Rowan passed. The conversations didn't stop. They shifted. Lower, shorter, more careful. Rowan recognized the pattern. He had seen it before. Not in towns, in units. When someone stopped belonging. Lena Brooks noticed it too. She stood near the edge of the clearing one morning, arms crossed over her moss-green parka, watching Rowan work without speaking. Her posture was the same as always, upright, controlled. But there was something sharper in her eyes now. "They're talking," she said finally. Rowan didn't look up. "They always are. Not like this." That made him pause. He set the tool down slowly, straightened, and turned toward her. "What changed?" he asked. Lena hesitated. Not because she didn't know, because she did. "Victor didn't tell them to turn on you," she said. "He didn't have to." Rowan's expression didn't shift. "That's the point," she continued. "He let them decide it was easier." Rowan let out a slow breath. Easier than what? Than questioning everything they've been living on. The words settled into the space between them. Heavy, unavoidable. Rowan looked past her, toward the distant line of trees. The town wasn't far, but it felt further now. It happened again that afternoon. A truck drove up the logging road, slow, deliberate, not stopping, not unloading, just passing. The driver didn't look at Rowan, didn't need to. The message was clear enough. Ash noticed it too. The German shepherd stood still, his body angled slightly toward the road, ears shifting with each distant sound. But he didn't react, didn't move forward, didn't chase, just watched. Miriam Hale arrived just before sunset. She didn't drive all the way up. Rowan saw her walking the last stretch of the path, her steps careful, hesitant, as if each one cost her more than the last. She looked smaller out here. The forest had a way of doing that to people. Her coat hung loosely around her shoulders, beige against the darker tones of the trees. Her hair was tied back, but strands had come loose, framing a face that looked more tired than old. When she stopped a few feet away, she didn't speak right away. Didn't meet Rowan's eyes. Ash moved slightly forward. Not aggressive, just present. Miriam noticed, swallowed. Then finally, "I didn't come to ask for anything," she said. Rowan waited, because that wasn't why she was here. "I came because..." Her voice faltered, then steadied. "Because I don't think I can carry it anymore." Rowan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Carry what?" Miriam looked up then, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in her gaze. "Knowing," she said. The word hung there, simple, heavy, final. "I saw it," Miriam continued, her voice quieter now, but no longer uncertain. "Not everything. Not at first. But enough." Rowan didn't move, didn't interrupt. He let her speak, because this wasn't about him asking, it was about her finally answering. "It started with the maps," she said. "Lines that didn't match, land that shifted on paper but not in reality." Her hands tightened slightly in front of her. "I asked about it. Your grandmother told me to leave it alone." A pause. "I didn't." Rowan watched her carefully, not judging, not forgiving, just listening. "Then your father found out," she said. That made something in Rowan's chest tighten. Subtle. But there. Miriam saw it. "And he didn't stay quiet," she added. Rowan looked away briefly, toward the mill, toward the water, anywhere but her. "He tried to stop it," Miriam continued, "tried to bring it to the council, tried to make it public." Her voice dropped. "They shut him down." "How?" Rowan asked. Miriam shook her head. "Not directly," she said. "That's not how it works here." She glanced toward the distant tree line. "They made it inconvenient." Rowan understood. Of course he did. "He didn't back down," Miriam said. "And then—" She stopped. Not because she didn't remember, because she did. Too clearly. Rowan finished it for her. "The accident." Miriam closed her eyes briefly. "Yes." Silence. The kind that didn't ask to be filled. Ash moved. Not toward Miriam, not toward Rowan, toward the edge of the clearing. He lowered his head, nose tracing the ground in a slow, deliberate pattern. Then stopped. One spot. Still. Rowan followed his gaze. There was nothing obvious. No tracks, no markings. Just earth. Undisturbed. Ash pressed his paw lightly against the ground. Once. Then stepped back. Rowan frowned. "What is it?" Ash didn't respond. Didn't repeat the motion. He simply stood there, watching that exact point. Miriam spoke softly behind him. "He used to stand like that too." Rowan didn't turn. "Who?" "Your father." The words landed differently, not like memory, like something still present. Rowan stepped closer to the spot, knelt, pressed his hand against the ground. Cold, solid. But there, a faint difference, not surface, underneath. He looked up at Miriam. "What's buried here?" Miriam hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't know," she said. "But he came out here the day before he died." The air shifted. Not physically. Something else. Something deeper. Rowan stood slowly. His eyes moved from the ground, to Ash, to Miriam, then to the mill. Everything was connecting. Not cleanly, not fully, but enough. Miriam stepped back slightly. "I didn't tell anyone," she said. "Not then. Not after." Her voice dropped. "I thought, if I stayed quiet, it would pass." Rowan's expression hardened. Not outwardly, but in the way his posture changed. "It didn't," he said. Miriam nodded. "No," she replied. "It didn't." The light began to fade again. Not suddenly, gradually, like the day was choosing to end, without waiting for anyone to be ready. Lena appeared at the edge of the clearing, her presence quiet but steady. She had heard enough, seen enough. Her eyes moved between Rowan and the spot in the ground. Then back to Rowan. "You're not just dealing with records anymore," she said. Rowan met her gaze. "I know." Lena took a step closer, her voice lower now, more deliberate. You sure you want to keep going? A pause. Because this stops being about you real quick. Rowan didn't answer right away. He looked at Ash. The dog stood beside him again. Calm, certain, unshaken. Then Rowan looked back at Lena. This was never just about me, he said. The wind picked up slightly, moving through the trees in a low, steady sound. The kind that felt like something passing through, not settling. Miriam stepped back further. She had said what she came to say. That was enough. More than she had managed for years. Rowan didn't stop her, didn't call after her. Some things didn't need closure. Not yet. He looked down at the ground again, then at the mill, then at the forest beyond. For the first time since he arrived. He wasn't thinking about leaving. He was thinking about what had been left behind. The town hall was already full when Rowan Hale arrived. Not loud, not restless, just waiting. Rows of wooden chairs filled the space, their surfaces worn smooth by decades of use. The walls were lined with old photographs, men and women from another time, their expressions caught between pride and permanence. Today, none of that mattered. What mattered was the silence. It pressed against the room like something alive, heavy, expectant. Rowan stepped inside, his boots sounding louder than they should against the wooden floor. His olive field jacket carried the faint scent of the forest, of cold air and unfinished work, out of place among polished surfaces and careful appearances. Ash moved beside him, calm and steady. Not leading, not following, matching. People turned, not all at once, not dramatically, just enough. Enough for Rowan to feel it. The shift, the hesitation, the distance. At the front of the room stood Victor Kane, exactly where he belonged. Or at least, where he had made himself belong. His posture was controlled as always, his charcoal coat clean, unwrinkled, untouched by the environment around him. His hands rested lightly on the table before him, one of them near a slim leather case. He didn't move when Rowan entered. Didn't react. Just watched. Lena Brooks stood off to the side, arms crossed, her stance grounded but alert. Her gaze tracked Rowan's movement, then shifted briefly to Ash, then back to Victor. She wasn't choosing sides. Not yet. But she was watching closely. Miriam Hale sat near the back, smaller than she had seemed in the forest. Her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her eyes moving between Rowan and the floor, as if unsure which one she deserved to face. Rowan didn't stop walking until he reached the front. Then he set the documents down. Carefully. Deliberately. The sound was soft, but it carried. "I'm not here to argue," Rowan said. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "I'm here to finish something that should have been done a long time ago." Victor's expression didn't change, not even slightly. "That's a strong way to begin," he replied calmly, "for someone who hasn't been part of this town in years." A ripple moved through the room, small but real. Rowan didn't react. He opened the first document, turned it, let the front row see. "Land surveys," he said. "Original boundaries. Before they were altered." Victor tilted his head slightly. "Paper can say anything," he replied, "especially when it's been handled by the wrong people." Another ripple. Stronger this time. Rowan reached for the next piece. Photographs. Placed them beside the papers. "Night shipments," he said. "Unregistered, moving through restricted zones." Victor glanced at them briefly, then back at Rowan. "Grainy images," he said. No context, no verification. The room shifted again, not toward Rowan, not away from Victor, just uncertain. Rowan felt it. The edge, the moment where truth should have landed, but didn't. He had seen this before. Not in towns, in operations, where facts existed, but belief didn't follow. Victor stepped forward slightly, not aggressively, just enough. Let's assume, for a moment, that what you're presenting has some basis, he said. Even then, what exactly are you accusing? Rowan met his gaze. You, he said. Simple, direct. Victor smiled faintly, not amused, not threatened, just patient. And you expect them, he said, gesturing lightly to the room, to accept that based on this? For a fraction of a second, Rowan hesitated. Not visibly, but enough. Because this was the mistake. He knew it now. Truth wasn't enough, it never had been. The room leaned, not physically, emotionally, toward Victor. Miriam shifted in her seat. Lena's posture tightened slightly, but no one spoke. Then, Ash moved. He didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't break the silence. He simply stepped forward, from Rowan's side to the center of the room. Then he sat, facing Victor, still, composed, unmoving. Victor didn't react at first. Why would he? It was just a dog. But Ash didn't look away, didn't blink, didn't shift. Seconds passed, longer than they should have, longer than was comfortable. Something changed, small, subtle, but real. Victor's hand moved, not dramatically, just a slight adjustment. Closer to the leather case beside him, Lena saw it. Her eyes narrowed, not in suspicion, but in recognition, not of the object, of the reaction. Ash remained still, watching, not accusing, not threatening, just waiting. And for the first time, Victor looked away. The moment passed, quietly, but it left something behind. Lena stepped forward, not toward Rowan, toward the table. Her movements were controlled, deliberate, the same way she approached everything, methodically, without wasted energy. "What's in the case?" she asked. Victor didn't answer immediately. He smiled again. "That's not relevant." Lena didn't move, didn't blink. "Open it," she said. The room shifted. Not fully, but enough. Victor exhaled slowly, as if considering whether this was worth the effort. Then, he opened the case. Inside, documents. Neatly arranged, prepared. Lena stepped closer, picked one up. Her eyes moved quickly across the page, then slowed, then stopped. She turned it, so others could see. "A new contract," she said, her voice steady, controlled. "But not for this land." A pause. "Another section, East Ridge." Murmurs began, not loud, but no longer silent. Rowan stepped closer, looked down. The signatures were clear. Official, final, Victor's, and others, names that belonged to the room. Miriam stood slowly. Her voice shook, but didn't break. "I saw those before," she said. Victor's gaze snapped toward her. "Sit down," he said sharply. Miriam didn't. "I saw them," she repeated. Stronger now. The room changed. Not all at once, but enough. Ben Carter stepped forward from the back. A man in his early 70s, broad-shouldered despite his age, his face weathered by years of outdoor work. His movements were slow, but not weak, measured, like someone who had spent a lifetime choosing when to act. He looked at the contract, then at Victor, then at Rowan. "I remember when that land wasn't for sale," he said quietly. Others spoke. Not loudly, not confidently, but they spoke. The silence broke. Victor didn't raise his voice, didn't argue, didn't lose control. But something in his posture shifted, just enough. Rowan watched it happen, not with satisfaction, not with victory, just awareness. Because this wasn't about winning, it was about breaking something that had held too long. Ash stepped back, returned to Rowan's side. The moment was over, but the effect remained. Rowan exhaled slowly. Not relief, not yet. He looked at the room, at the people, at the space that had once turned away from him. "They knew," he said quietly, not accusing, not loud, just stating. "And now they don't get to pretend they don't." The room didn't answer, but it didn't turn away either, and that was enough. The town did not change overnight. That would have been too easy, too clean, too forgiving. What changed instead was the silence. It no longer protected the same people. Victor Kane was gone within the week, not dragged out, not humiliated, escorted, quietly. 2 state investigators arrived in unmarked vehicles just after sunrise 3 days after the meeting. They wore plain coats, carried thin folders, and spoke in measured tones that left no room for argument. The one who led the questioning introduced himself as Daniel Mercer. A man in his mid-40s, tall, with a narrow face and tired eyes that had seen too many cases end the same way. His hair was cut short, practical, with threads of gray at the sides. His voice was calm, but there was weight behind it. The kind that didn't need to raise itself. He didn't ask many questions, because he didn't need to. The documents had already begun speaking. Rowan didn't attend the interviews. He didn't need to. He had said what he came to say. After that, the truth had moved on its own. Still, it didn't feel like victory. Not the way people imagined it would. The forest remained the same. The mill still stood where it always had. The stream kept moving, indifferent to everything that had been uncovered. Some things had changed, but not everything. Rowan stood near the edge of the platform one morning, his hands resting lightly against the newly repaired railing. The wood beneath his fingers felt solid now, steady in a way it hadn't been before. Not perfect, but real. Ash lay a few feet away, stretched out in a patch of sunlight that filtered through the tall pines. His black and tan coat caught the light in quiet contrast, the edges of his form softening under the warmth. His breathing was slow, calm. For once, not watching everything, just existing. Rowan looked out over the water. The wheel hadn't been fixed yet, not fully, but it would be. He knew that now. Footsteps approached from behind, slower than most, deliberate. Rowan didn't turn immediately. He already knew who it was. Mabel Quinn stopped beside him. She was smaller than most remembered. Age had taken some of her height, but none of her presence. Her white hair was pulled back into a loose knot, and her cardigan hung comfortably over a faded blouse. Her hands, though worn, still moved with purpose, as if they remembered work even when there was none to be done. Her eyes were soft, but not weak. They saw things, and kept them. "You stayed," she said gently. Rowan nodded once. "Looks that way." Mabel smiled faintly, not surprised. "Your grandmother always said you would?" Rowan let out a quiet breath. "She said a lot of things." Mabel tilted her head slightly. "Not many," she replied. "Just the ones that mattered." They stood there for a moment, the quiet settling naturally between them. Not heavy, not empty, just present. "She tried," Mabel added after a while. Rowan didn't ask who. He knew. "She did," he said. Mabel nodded. "But trying doesn't always mean finishing." A pause. "Sometimes it just means leaving it for someone else." Rowan looked down at his hands, then out at the water again. Elias Wren didn't see the wheel turn. The old man had passed 2 nights before. No warning, no struggle, just gone. Rowan had found him in the cabin, seated in the same chair he always used, his posture slightly forward as if he had simply paused mid-thought and decided not to return. There had been no fear in his expression, no tension, just stillness. They buried him near the edge of the clearing, not far from the water, where the sound could reach him. No speeches, no crowd, just Rowan, Lena, Mabel, and Ash. Lena had stood with her hands in her jacket pockets, her expression unchanged, but her eyes sharper than usual. She hadn't spoken much. She didn't need to. Loss wasn't something she dressed up. Afterward, she had turned to Rowan. "You're finishing it," she said. Not a question. Rowan had nodded. Now, standing beside the repaired structure, Rowan understood something he hadn't before. Elias hadn't stayed to see the result, because that had never been the point. Ash stood, without warning, without sound. He walked slowly toward the water wheel, not hurried, not uncertain. Then he stopped, right at the edge of the structure. The wheel shifted, slightly. Rowan frowned. It wasn't supposed to move yet, not until the final brace was secured. But the current had changed, just enough. The wood creaked, a slow, deliberate sound, and then the wheel turned. Not fully, not smoothly, but it turned. Once. Ash didn't react, didn't bark, didn't move. He simply stood there, watching it. And for a brief moment, Rowan felt it. Not accomplishment, not relief. Something quieter, something deeper. It wasn't finished, but it had begun. Rowan stepped closer, slowly, carefully. His hand reached out, steadying the frame as the water pushed against the worn paddles. The motion wasn't perfect, but it held. He adjusted the brace, tightened the joint, shifted the weight just enough. The wheel turned again. This time, further. The sound changed. From resistance to rhythm, water moved. Wood answered, and something that had been still for years found motion again. Rowan stepped back, watching, not interfering. Ash returned to his side, sat, close. The two of them stood there in silence, not waiting, not searching, just present. Rowan looked out over the clearing, the forest beyond, the path that led back to the town. He could leave. That hadn't changed. There was still money, still opportunity, still a world that didn't ask questions. But Ash didn't move, didn't look toward the road, didn't shift his attention away. He stayed. Rowan followed his gaze, not toward the trees, not toward the past, toward the mill. And for the first time, there was no pull in two directions, no weight of decision, no need to choose, because he already had. Not when he found the truth, not when he stood in the hall, not when the town finally looked back, but here, where the water moved, where the wheel turned, where something broken had been given just enough time to find its way again. Rowan exhaled slowly. The tension that had followed him for years, not gone, but quieter. "Yeah," he said under his breath, almost to himself. Ash shifted slightly, pressing against his leg. The sun rose higher through the trees, casting longer beams of light across the clearing. The air warmed just enough to soften the edges of the cold. Behind them, the forest stood, unchanged, unjudging. Ahead of them, the mill turned, not perfectly, but honestly. And for the first time in a long time, Rowan Hale wasn't trying to outrun anything. He was standing still, and that was enough. There are moments in life when everything seems to be taken from us. Our place, our name, even the truth about who we are. And in those moments, it is easy to believe that what is lost is gone forever. But sometimes, what feels like an ending is not the end at all. Sometimes it is where something unseen begins to move. Not loudly, not all at once, but quietly, patiently, with purpose. Maybe that is what a miracle really looks like. Not something that breaks the world open in an instant, but something that works beneath it, guiding us back step by step, even when we think we are walking away. In our daily lives, we all carry something heavy: regret, silence, questions that were never answered. And often, we wonder why things didn't turn out the way they should have. But maybe, just maybe, there is a plan we cannot see yet. Maybe there is a hand guiding us through the moments we thought we were alone. And maybe the things we are meant to face are not there to break us, but to bring us back to who we were always meant to become. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who might need it today. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and what part of the story stayed with you the most. And if you believe that even in the hardest seasons, there is still a purpose, still a path, still something greater watching over us, subscribe to Veteran Dog Stories so you don't miss the next journey. May God watch over you, guide your steps, and bring peace to every place in your life that feels uncertain. And wherever you are right now, you are not alone.